School's Not Out, your daily classroom for CSEC and CAPE students. Today's lesson is on communication studies. We're going to focus on Module 3, Speaking and Writing. I am Kelleen Ayton. So, our objectives from the CAPE Communication Studies Syllabus 2019 requires students to be able to speak and write with effective control of grammar, vocabulary, mechanics, and conventions of speech and writing in the use of Caribbean Standard English. Students should be able to manipulate nonverbal elements and modes of speech and writing appropriate to specific purposes and audiences. Students should be able to use appropriate organizing and formatting strategies in producing specific types of oral and written communication. So what are today's specific objectives? Students at the end of the lesson should be able to state the differences between speaking and writing, discuss the writing process, identify different organizational strategies, types of writing and elements of writing, discuss different types of speech and speech presentations, identify different components of a speech, and discuss different visual aids and technology that can be used to aid speech delivery. Let's begin. Our first engagement, let's listen and let's watch.
Direction to go to Falmouth. While he then occur on the red, which was going up, he then ride along on the front of the wish and then into the top of the mirror view glass where you looked out as the driver, and then flick overturn on the front of the TIDA and then overturn 3 to 4 times and occur on the wall and then explode.
An alleged eyewitness also gave her account.
And I see the accident when the black car lick in the rubbish truck side, and it tried to turn and it end up lick right over there. Yeah, over there. Same time, woman fly out and she died.
Fire brigade personnel were also on the scene.
I'm sure that you are familiar, you have seen this news item before. So why have I used this as our first engagement? Let's quickly look at the features of speaking. Speech takes place in real time. Based on what you just saw, when we talk about real time, we are talking about the actual time of the event. So speech basically is spontaneous. They gave eyewitness reports based on what they saw. So at that time, they reported what they saw, real time. Speech is interactive. And so yes, we can speak to ourselves, but remember, oftentimes it is with somebody else. So it's interactive. Speech is more personal. So if we're supposed to look at speech as opposed to writing, it's less formal than if we are writing. And speech has a purpose. Why is it? You were looking at the video. So they were informing the reporter of what exactly transpired. And we are going to look at our second engagement because our focus is on speaking and writing. So this second stimulus I'm going to actually read. I am currently a student at a university pursuing a degree in the field of computer science and mathematics. I must agree with some of the issues raised by the prof. The one that strikes me the most is the headless math department. But let us not focus here. Isn't he a member of the math department and a very prominent one at that? From this, I think I would not be out of line to say that Prof. Farley is quite headless. Don't you think? You see, Mr. Wignall, what is really happened is not been told. And this is from the Observer, and this was from '07. So what is the practicality of using this second stimulus? We're looking at the features of writing. Now, the first feature I have here is that writing is planned. Do you remember what I just read? Does that look like it was planned? So when we talk about writing plan, it takes time for us to produce, particularly if we are comparing this to speech. Writing is permanent. And so when we write, we need to bear in mind that this will serve for centuries, decades to come. If you looked at the bottom of what I just read, that was from 2007. It's now 2020, and we still have that in writing. It is a process. So there are different stages to writing. It calls for an audience. Who is our listener? Who is our reader? And lastly, rules of language. Please remember that when we write, we must remember the rules governing the language. I'm sure what you just read did not show that the writer used all the necessary rules of language. We are looking at examples now of writing and speaking. So for writing, we are thinking of letters, text messages, memorandum, and agenda. While for speaking, we are looking at a toast, motivational speech, a valedictory speech, eulogy, and the list is not exhausted. The following are important things to note before writing or delivering a speech. It is crucial, students, that we know the subject, the purpose, and the audience. When I talk about subject here, I'm not talking about the subjects that you do at school. We are talking about the subject matter for which you are actually writing and speaking about. So you need to be clear on exactly what is required of you to present. When we speak of purpose, why are you speaking or why are you writing? Is it to bring about entertainment? Is it to disseminate some form of information? We have to be clear what is the purpose for which we are speaking and or writing. And the third one is audience. Who is your listener? Who is the recipient of the writing or the speech? We need to be clear because this will affect how we write and what we write. So let us delve a little deeper into writing. The writing process is crucial for us to understand and for us to use if we do not want our writing to look like the one that I had in the stimulus, that I use as a stimulus, all right, or the engagement. So there are three core areas of the writing process. The first one is pre-writing. In green, we have writing or revising. And in the third, which is the orange section, editing or proofreading. Let us spend a little more time looking at what happens at each process, at each step. So the pre-writing, what happens here? At this section, we identify the task, we identify our audience, we identify our purpose. What are the required information that we need to satisfy the task at hand? So there are certain activities that we do at this initial stage. What are some of these activities? Brainstorming, think through, a lot of things happening, and we can quickly jot these down. Some of us are a little bit more organized at this section, and so we form or use what we call cluster or mapping, or we use graphic organizers. And that's the pre-writing stage. The second stage is writing and revising. What happens here? At this section, you're actually writing, and we present what we call drafts or prototypes. So all of these drafts, we are improving on the former, okay? And again, here we're going to be focusing on our introduction. We're going to be focusing on our body. We're going to be focusing on our conclusion. Lastly, the third and final step, editing or proofreading. This is where we are specifically doing editing. So we are more focused now on the key aspects of grammar, the organization or layout. We look focusing on making sure that all the words are correctly spelled. We're focusing on punctuation. And those are the three key steps of the writing process: pre-writing, writing and revising, editing and proofreading. And this will make us produce good writing. What are the different types of writing that you may be engaged in? And I know we're all familiar with this from CSEC. So it's just a quick reminder. These four types of writing are narrative, descriptive, expository, and argumentative. I want to also point out, students, that sometimes there is an overlap, meaning you could see a little descriptive writing in a narrative for argument's sake. So let's look at the narrative. For the narrative, we are telling. Think of your story. So we are going to be seeing key features or elements such as a plot, setting, characters. There may be evidence of dialogue. We think of a climax. There's a conflict. There's a resolution. For the descriptive writing, what should readily come to mind? You're writing to describe. You're creating a visual picture of whatever it is that you're writing about. So we're going to be using our adjectives. We're going to be using our figurative language. We're going to be using appeal to senses. For the expository, we are explaining. And this is normally done using factual information, statistics, authoritative evidence. The writing also tends to have a specific organizational style, and we'll get to that eventually. Is it problem and solution, cause and effect, among other styles? And finally, argumentative. When we produce argumentative writing, it is the essence is to persuade or to convince. So we may use rhetorical questions. We may use emotive language. We may use statistics or authoritative evidence. And I want to point out that these are just some of the features of these writing. Let us take a quick look at some sample paragraphs of each. So the first one is a sample for the narrative. This past weekend, I had the time of my life. First, Friday night, I had my best friend over and we made a delicious mouth-watering pizza. After we ate, we had a friendly video game. On Saturday, my dad took us out on the boat. The weather was perfect and the water was warm. It was a great day to go for a swim. Later that night, we went to the movies. So you get the gist of what I'm saying. I'm telling, and you can follow based on this. And there's evidence of also description in this narrative piece. Let us look at the sample for descriptive writing. My brother Michael's bedroom shows his big interest in fantasy and science fiction. Glow-in-the-dark stars are pasted on the ceiling where, at night, they glow in the dark. Other stars can be seen covering the ceiling during the day, giving the appearance of a starry sky. Are you imagining that room? Movie posters line the walls. There's a poster of the Matrix in a shiny chrome. Below the posters are two black steel bookcases crammed with old books. So students, right there and then, you feel as if you are in Michael's bedroom. Then we have expository. Remember, with the expository, we are explaining. And this is an interesting passage. The modern Olympics is very unlike the ancient Olympic Games. Individual events are different. While there were no swimming races in the ancient games, for example, there were chariot races. There were no female contestants, and all athletes competed in the nude. Of course, the ancient and modern Olympics are also alike in many ways. Some events, such as the javelin and discus throws, are the same. And I'm going to pause here. So what is happening here? It's factual information that is being produced. Remember I said that it tends to use a particular organizational style. So we are looking at Olympics then as opposed to now. And we see the style of comparison and contrast, looking at similarities and differences of the modern and ancient Olympic Games. So factual information and examples are given. All right? Then we have persuasive writing. And remember, we're convincing. I'm sure we have seen this at some point on the road. Running the red light may put out your light. Of course, it is convincing us that we need to drive and make note and obey the traffic lights. And I like this because there's a play on the word light. So the first use of light, there's a literal stoplight. But the second light there refers to our life. All right? We may lose our life if we don't obey. And it says Jamaican roadsides, they're mad. But note, students, that mad is not the regular English language meaning of being insane. They are, not the norm, off the chain, as we would say. They are different. Okay. So I highlighted the fact that we use organizational patterns or styles when we are doing our expository writing. And I just want to give you some examples of the different organizational patterns that you may choose from, you may use, you may identify in writing. So we have classification, all right? And this is where you categorize. We have chronological and sequential ordering. So you think of a sequence. Are we going to go from least important to most important or vice versa? Are we going to go from most recent date to way back or vice versa, for argument's sake? Deductive and inductive ordering. Are we moving from general to specific or specific to general? Topical ordering. So features in this writing would be subheadings to guide us as we go along. Comparison and contrast. We just saw that in the example for the expository paragraph. Cause and effect. What causes something and what's the implication? Problem and solution. Again, what problem arises and how can we go about resolving this issue? And definition, you would be seeing particularly maybe technical jargon used, and they are defined as you read along. So those are our organizational patterns, and there are others that we could add, but for time we just gave these as examples. Features of good writing. When we write, students, bearing in mind that oftentimes it is in a permanent state, we want to ensure that persons who read what we have written, they can, say something good of our writing. So what are certain features that we should ensure evident in our writing? The first one I have on the screen is good grammar. So here I'm talking about, for instance, subject-verb agreement. We was playing outside. We don't want that. All right? We ensure that our subject agrees with our verb, and that's just one aspect of grammar. Correct spelling. So you're not writing T-H-E-I-R for T-H-E-R-E. Transitional words and phrases, and I'm going to spend a little more time on that. So remember, transitions guide us from one paragraph to another, show connection, interrelatedness, right? So we should have our transitional words and phrases. Thesis, and oftentimes we have our thesis statement, and that is in the first part or paragraph of our writing. Correct punctuation marks. Are we using a semicolon as a comma? Are we using a comma where a full stop should be? We have to be clear on the correct use of punctuation marks because that can affect meaning. Topic sentence. And if we are using pointers to discuss, it is very important, students, that we use topic sentence to guide our readers as to what will be the focus of that particular paragraph. Sentence structure and paragraphing, that we are not using sentence fragments or run-on sentences, that we don't have 2 long pages and 1 paragraph. All of these are important and key features of good writing. Let us look on these advertisements, and they are real advertisements. So you're driving along and we see this. Dentists look after your teeth. Who looks after theirs? Do you see any problem there? Yes, there is one there. It's actually on theirs. So we notice that there's an apostrophe on the outside. Theirs in itself without the apostrophe shows ownership. So this apostrophe is unnecessary. You go to the bathroom, the restroom, and you see this sign. Employees must wash hands before, is that leaving or living? So we identify with these students. Remember, we're talking about writing. And somebody must have taken, thanks to our cell phone, we capture these and we put them in a public space all over for persons to ridicule, all right, or criticize the writing. This one, I'm sure you have seen this maybe in some corner shop or the other, maybe not to the extent as this example, but look at it. Price list, juice, rice or rice, flour, bread, is that bread or is it something else? Sugar, milk, drink, liquor, and of course they got the ice correct. I'm saying this to say, students, we have to observe the rules as we put things in writing. So I touched on transitional words and phrases, and there's a lot on the screen. And I'm just going to quickly go through the different headings. So we have transitional words and phrases. And let me just pause here and remind you. Transitional words and phrases show linkage, connection between and cohesion between paragraphs and sentences. So we have transitional words coming at the beginning of a paragraph. To begin, firstly, in addition, and we have them internally where they are showing connection between one sentence to. So you have the sentence and then in the following sentence, furthermore, so you are showing another point. So that's one of the purposes of transitional words, show connection. So we have transitional words that show connection for emphasis. And one such example is indeed. Addition, we're showing an additional point. So we say in addition, furthermore. Contrast, unlike, nevertheless. Order, first, second. Something showing result, as a result of. Illustration, for example. Comparison, we could use the word similarly. For summary, we could use in conclusion. For reason, we could use because of. For condition, in the case that. For concession, we could use the word admittedly. For generalization, for the most part, X, Y, Z. So remember, you can access this after. There are so many that you will need to use in your writing. Let us quickly look at this activity. Dr. Stacey-Ann Robinson, a heart specialist, is speaking to a group of teenagers from the Hill and Gully Youth Club about the dangers of vaping. The coordinator of the club, Mrs. Baker, has suggested that the members of the youth club pass on the information given by Dr. Robinson to the various school bodies to which they belong. Suggest 2 means of writing that the club members could use to capture the interest of their fellow students. Focus students on the task. 2 means of writing. Is it poster and drama, pamphlets and poster, pamphlets and poetry recital, speech and drama? Because the focus is on means of writing, our answer could only be pamphlets and poster. Suggest 2 reasons related to the delivery of the speech that might account for the teenagers' behavior. So they are yawning, they're having their own conversation. What are 2 reasons related to what now? The delivery of the speech. Is it low pitch, monotone, her dress, volume? Because it's related to the delivery of the speech, while dress can affect how people accept or reject a message, the focus is on delivery. So our answer would be 1, 2, and 4 only. All right. Mrs. Baker has been asked to prepare a written version of Dr. Robinson's presentation. Which of the following are features of language organization necessary to create a good written report? Bulleted points, proper paragraphing, proper sentence structure, transitional words. Remember now, necessary. So the answer is 2, 3, and 4. 1 is out because while we can use bulleted points, it's not a necessity to create a good written report. Let's quickly go through types of speech. So we are moving from writing and we are going into speaking. So when we deliver a speech, it's either informative, such as press conference, World Health Organization briefing, town hall meeting. And this is giving the listeners information. Or it is persuasive. So you're trying to influence your audience's opinion, their opinions, their attitudes or actions. So we think of Martin Luther King's speech that is really the need for equality. Or campaigning, you're running for head girl or head boy. You need to come up with a speech that will convince your colleagues, your classmates to vote for you. Or special occasion and entertainment. These are used on special occasions, vote of thanks, your toast, introduction of a guest speaker. Those are our different types of speech. And we are going to quickly listen to these. Quickly. So an example of the informative. Let's listen.
As cases of COVID-19. She arrived in the island on March 4th, presented to the public health system on March 9th, and has been in isolation since then. Based on the patient's travel history.
This was when we were informed of the first case that we had here as it relates to COVID-19. That's the informative speech. Let's go on now to the persuasive speech.
Place flood out. Everything
no,
in the...
Hold on. Tell me, you were in... What happened? You were asleep?
Yes, Rosie and her family were sleeping. Waking up, feel water and waking up. Right through the house, through the bathroom, through every door, kitchen door, every door. Everything in the house flood out. When I talk about everything. No bed, no dead for sleep on. Settee, where you could have rest in a phone, where you could have make phone call and video for sure. Everything flood out and we want back every single piece of
So what happened? You were sleeping and...
We were sleeping.
Yeah, and?
We were sleeping,
Yeah.
hear Prince screaming. When Prince screaming, say water. When you jump up and look, there is water. Many water, like Elsha. That type of water was there.
Okay, and Rosie's being persuasive. She's telling the relative authorities she needs to be compensated for her loss. And finally, we have the special occasion. All right, let's listen.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Chancellor and Dr. Michael Holding for their very inspiring and engaging addresses. The motto of the university is "A light rising from the west." And we, the graduating class of 2018, will hope to be beacons of inspiration from the East, the West, the North.
All right. So I'm sure based on what you just watched, you have a clear idea of what these 3 types are. Now, when we are presenting our speech, there are 4 ways that we can do so. So we have manuscript, and in this type of presentation, the speaker knows that he or she is supposed to present the speech, makes adequate preparation, writes the speech, and at the time of presentation, reads from the paper. That's the manuscript. For memorized, this one, again, the person would know ahead of time, make the necessary preparations, but guess what? When it is time to present, they are presented wholly and solely from memory. For the extemporaneous, you are familiar with that one. That's the one you use for your com studies orals. So you made the necessary preparations ahead of time, but on the day of delivery, you simply carry notes, jottings. And this is, you can just look at this glimpse and it tells you, just a little the order in which you are going. So it's not the complete speech. And we have the impromptu, and that speaks for itself. You are called upon suddenly. You don't get a lot of notice. So think about it. You go to a function, the person for the vote of thanks doesn't show up. And they know that you are good at doing that job. They just ask you maybe a couple minutes before to present that vote of thanks. So those are the presentations. Now the parts of the speech, students, we are looking at the hamburger effect. That first bun would be your introduction. Instead of a double whopper, you are having a triple whopper because you are developing 3 points. And the conclusion would be the last bun. So for your introduction, I'm quickly going through. Make sure you have a grabber. It could be a rhetorical question. It could be humor. It could be a startling statement. For your body, ensure, students, that you have enough examples or anecdote repetition to develop your points. And for your conclusion, you end with a challenge, an appeal to further action, or food for thought. Tips in speech delivery. Think of your pace of delivery, your projection, pronunciation, stress and emphasis, body posture, facial expression, your dress. If you have to use technical jargon, ensure that you explain it. Manage your time. Ensure you maintain eye contact and use appropriate channel or medium. Now, when we are delivering a speech, there are different things that we can use to captivate our audience and assist us in delivering. So an overhead projector, a PowerPoint presentation like I'm doing now, objects, models, samples, video clipping like what I just used, music, dramatization, tables, charts, graphs, diagrams, pictures, maps. All of these are different things that we can use to aid speech delivery. And let us quickly look at this video, and this will be our culminating activity. We are going to be watching, listening, and then we're going to be answering a few questions.
The coronavirus cannot move around by itself. If we control our movement, we can control the spread. If you do not have urgent matters to attend to, stay at home. If you have a cough, sneeze, sniffle, fever, stay at home. Flu-like symptoms or any respiratory illness, stay at home. If you do not have urgent matters to attend to, stay at home. By order under the Disaster Risk Management Act, stay at home. If you must go to the market, make a list and shop by it. Do not stay longer than necessary. Make a list and shop by it. Avoid touching surfaces. Avoid crowds and standing close. Use a mask or a scarf to cover nose and mouth. If you have a cough, sneeze, sniffle, fever, stay at home. Flu-like symptoms or any respiratory act, stay at home. Tan at your yard. By order under the Disaster Risk Management Act, stay at home.
All right. I'm sure you have seen that, all right, before. So imagine you are using that as your stimulus. Let's quickly go through these questions. Which feature of this advertisement would make young people in particular remember it? Is it the speaker's attire? Is it the words used? Is it the subject matter? Is it the use of music? Because we are featuring young people, more than likely it's going to be the use of music. Which language technique is most dominant in the advertisement? Is it repetition, anecdote, rhetorical questions, metaphor? Stay at home, that's the punchline. It has to be what? Repetition. What context of communication is evident in the Prime Minister's speech? We discussed this a couple of weeks ago. Is it intercultural, intrapersonal, organizational, or public? Definitely it is public, sometimes called mass. All right. Tiona wants to write an essay on airborne diseases but does not know how to begin. What are 2 pre-writing tasks that Tiona needs to complete during the planning stage? Planning stage. Brainstorming and editing, brainstorming and clustering, brainstorming and reviewing, brainstorming and rewriting. It is a pre-writing stage, so our answer is brainstorming and clustering. Which of the following is not a benefit of essay writing? Is it dissemination of information, permanent record, reviewing of information, interaction with recipient? Because it's essay writing, the one which is out is the interaction with recipient. Then, Kamisha has opted to open a nursery to care for 3 to 4-year-olds. List 2 audiovisual aids she might use to help teach these lessons. Audio visual. Remember to listen out or read with caution. Is it radio and television, television and computer, posters and charts, books and crayons? Because it is audio visual, so you're supposed to be seeing and hearing, it is television and computer. And our last question. What 2 modern pieces of communication equipment could Kamisha purchase to help in the overall management? We're looking about management now, not teaching. Of the non-instructional side of the nursery. Is it a typewriter and record book? Is it a register and computer? Is it a camera and logbook? Is it a photocopier and a fax machine? We're looking at modern pieces, overall management, non-instructional side. Bearing those 3 key sections of the question, our answer would be photocopier and fax machine. You have been very, very, very good students today. We have discussed so much. And just quickly recapping, we looked at the differences between writing and speaking, examples of speaking and writing, features of good writing, the process of writing, organizational patterns. We also looked at transitional words and phrases, types and parts of the speech, methods of speech delivery, organizing a speech, and lastly, technology that aid speech delivery. Again, students, I encourage you to study hard. Time is winding down. We are almost there. Look over your notes, keep practicing, make use of this format, this platform that we have provided for you. And remember, do your best. Read your questions. Look out for key section, key terms that are used in the question. All right? And so that's all for today for communication studies, speaking and writing. We hope you grasp all of the points we discussed today. Until next time, I'm Kelleen Ayton.